Because of possible threats to the ozone layer, time is running out for the use of Halon 1211 as a firefighting agent. The National Resource Defense Council and the 1990 Clean Air Act have asked for the eventual phase-out of Halon. Since there are no suitable replacement agents, current government programs are directed to reclaiming and recycling Halon without releasing it to the atmosphere. This video will show you how to do this using the Defender 2000 Recharge and Recovery Unit. The Defender 2000 is a self-contained machine that can perform three basic functions. It can reclaim Halon 1211 from portable extinguishers for continued use or other pieces of firefighting equipment such as Halon wheeled units, crash trucks, and twin-agent skid-mounted units. It can recharge these units with Halon in the Defender's tank or with Halon stored in bulk storage tanks. Finally, the Defender can recycle Halon. It does this by cleaning and drying contaminated Halon by running it through a filter. The basic components of the Defender 2000 are the pump deck, 500-pound storage tank, and a hose kit with adapters. The pump deck pumps the Halon through a filter that cleans and dries the Halon and controls the flow. The top half of the unit, the pump deck assembly, contains the control panel, the pump, and all of the quick disconnect ports marked P1 through P5. The pump is run off compressed air set at 65 to 85 psi. The Defender's storage tank assembly holds a maximum of 500 pounds of Halon. The hose kit consists of hoses and adapters that are hooked up between storage tanks and extinguishers. We've mentioned that the Defender 2000 will be reclaiming, recharging, and recycling Halon. These are called operating modes. To operate the Defender 2000, you'll do a setup for each operating mode and job. The setups always follow the same sequence. First, you hook up hoses to and from extinguishers, tanks, and the Defender. The hose hookups will change from mode to mode, but hookup procedures are listed in the manual for every job you'll be doing. Second, you'll be setting the control valves to listed positions for each job you'll be doing. All hose ports are marked with a P in front of the number. The valves all have knobs or handles to operate them. These are also marked. Valves all have a V in front of the number. Here, V5 turns the pump on and off. On the Defender's tank are three combination valve ports. These are marked TV1, TV2, and TV3. After the hoses and valves are hooked up and set, you'll do the step-by-step process to perform the operation. For each mode and each job, the sequence is always the same. First, hoses, second, valves, and third, the process. If you're wondering why the time is running on your screen, it's there to help you fast forward to the sections for various jobs. Those jobs that you'll most frequently be doing will be covered in this video, and the fast forward time for these jobs is printed in the operator's manual. Before getting into the three operating modes, let's take a break and talk about Halon and safety. Your work habits can only be as safe as you make them. It is recommended that the Defender 2000 operates with 65 to 85 pounds per square inch, or psi, of compressed air. Always wear safety glasses when operating the Defender. Double check all quick disconnect hookups to make sure they're fully engaged and can't pop off when you turn on the pump. The normal state of Halon 1211 is part liquid and part vapor. Since the liquid is heavier, it's always on the bottom of a tank and the vapor is always on top. Many larger tanks will have a separate port for liquid and for vapor. All extinguisher tanks and storage tanks are rated by the amount of Halon weight they can hold. When you're recharging an extinguisher, you'll be weighing it to make sure it's filled. There's also a pressure gauge on the extinguisher. Sometimes you'll have enough weight, but not enough pressure. Dry nitrogen is used to bring up the pressure. Dry nitrogen is used because it is an inert, dry gas. Do not use compressed air. Enough moisture will be present to cause corrosion of extinguisher shells when mixed with Halon. Periodically, it may be necessary to inspect the inside of the extinguisher or tank. If you see signs of rust or other deterioration, don't use it. Most compressed air lines have some water collected in them. The amount will vary by the amount of humidity in the air. It's also important not to let this moisture get to the defender's pump. On the backside of the pump deck, there's a special filter to collect this water. Check this frequently and drain the water out by opening the valve at the bottom of the filter. Always work with Halon in an area that's properly ventilated and away from gas, high heat, open flames from heaters, and people smoking. These conditions cause Halon to become toxic and attack your eyes and lungs. Take a few seconds to read all warning labels and instructions. The Defender's storage tank holds 500 pounds of Halon. The Defender 2000 itself weighs approximately 380 pounds empty of any Halon agent. Lock the caster wheels every time you move the Defender. Remember, the Defender should always be attended when it's being operated. Okay, let's do a fast review of what we've covered so far. You'll be reclaiming, recharging, and recycling Halon 1211. These three operations require you to perform a setup which consists of 1. Hooking up hoses, 2. Setting the valves, and 3. Performing the process. Ports for the hose hookups are marked P1 through P5 on the left side of the pump deck, and TV1, TV2, and TV3 on the Defender's storage tank. The valves are all marked V1 through V5. Each time you set up the Defender for a job, hook up compressed air to the port marked P1. The amount of air pressure in the unit is shown on the air pressure gauge. Below the gauge is a control valve that regulates incoming air pressure. Pull up the knob and set the operating pressure at 65 to 85 psi. Next to it is the on-off valve for the pump. The pump's speed can also be increased or decreased by rotating the valve between the on and off positions. At the top of the panel are the Halon gauges. From left to right, the left gauge shows the amount of pressure in the unit's 500-pound storage tank. Next is the first of 2 sight glass with moisture indicators. Through it, you'll see liquid Halon coming into the unit. The dot in the center maintains a green color when there is no moisture in the liquid Halon and will turn yellow if moisture is present. The center gauge is called a compound gauge because it can read both a positive pressure and a negative vacuum pressure. This is the pressure or vacuum that's in the extinguisher. The pressure drops as the Halon leaves the extinguisher. When it reads 10 to 20 inches of vacuum, all of the liquid Halon and vapor has been removed from the extinguisher. Next is the second sight glass with moisture indicator showing Halon leaving the Defender. It also has a dot that changes to a yellow color if there's water in the Halon. The last gauge on the right shows Halon pressure leaving the Defender. To recycle the Halon, run it through the filter to remove dirt and moisture. You can tell when the filter gets clogged by checking the 2 filter gauges. The gauge on the left shows Halon pressure coming into the filter, and the gauge on the right shows pressure leaving the filter. When the right gauge drops substantially below the left gauge reading, more than 10 psi, the filter needs to be inspected and possibly replaced. The V1 valve directs Halon to the extinguisher when you're filling it, or you can turn it to the tank position to direct it to the Defender's storage tank. The V2 and V3 valves allow you to pump liquid only or vapor only. V4 is used to recover Halon from the hoses. The Defender is furnished with a series of hose adapters. These allow you to hook up with any size and type of extinguisher or storage tank. An electronic leak detector is also furnished. From time to time, the seals in the quick disconnect fittings, the valves, and various hose connections will become worn, and the Halon will start to leak. The leak detector allows you to locate leaks quickly by giving a distinct warning sound. The Defender 2000 is a complete system designed to recover, recharge, and recycle Halon 1211. Good defense depends on good firefighting backup support. At the heart of this support is the maintenance of Halon. How well you do your job of recovering, recharging, and recycling Halon 1211 is important to everybody's safety. The remainder of this video training will cover the most common operations that you'll be doing with the Defender. For recovery operations, we demonstrate Halon recovery from handheld extinguishers, 150-pound wheeled units, and from tanks on firefighting crash trucks and skid-mounted twin-agent units. We'll recover the Halon in this 7-pound handheld extinguisher, clean and dry the Halon by running it through the filter and put it into the Defender's storage tank. The setup to do this operation starts with the hose connections, then the valve settings, then the process steps. First, hook up compressed air to the Defender's P1 port. Look at the air pressure gauge on the control panel and adjust it so it reads between 65 psi and 85 psi. To adjust the regulated pressure, pull up on the regulator knob and turn it to the right for more air pressure or to the left for less. At this point, it's a good operating habit to turn all of the valves to off. Connect a half-inch hose to the TV1 port for tank vapor. Connect the other end to the pump deck port P2 for tank vapor. Now we'll hook up the tank's liquid port TV2 to the pump deck's port P3 for tank liquid. These hoses will move the Halon vapor and liquid into the Defender's tank. Next, we have to get the Halon from the extinguisher to the Defender. The dual line has two hoses that merge at one end. At this end, there's a small line valve to open or close the dual line. Close this valve and hook up the two lines to the ports P4 and P5 on the pump deck. Either line can go to either port. Hook up the merged end of the dual line to the extinguisher. Note the adapter that is being used. Next, we'll set the valves to the positions needed to recover the Halon. Turn the TV1 tank vapor valve to off. Turn the TV2 tank liquid valve to on. Now we'll set the control panel valves so that the Halon passes through the filter for cleaning and drying and goes to the Defender's tank for storage. Turn the V2 valve to liquid. Turn the V3 valve to liquid. To get the Halon out of the extinguisher, we'll have to clamp open its handle and open the dual line valve. To start the recovery process, turn the V1 control panel valve to tank and the V5 pump valve to on. We are now recovering the Halon, and the top center gauge is dropping as the extinguisher is emptied. When the gauge drops to 20 psi, shake it a few times. When it reads 10 to 15 psi, turn valves V3 and V4 to vapor and V2 to off. Since there's no need to filter the vapor, this last step can save time when you're recovering larger extinguishers. When all of the liquid Halon is recovered, there will be no fluid passing through the left side moisture indicator. The pressure on the compound gauge will continue to fall. The extinguisher is empty when it reads 10 to 20 inches of mercury vacuum. At this time, close the tank and turn off the pump by turning valves V1 and V5 to off. This completes the demonstration for recovery from handheld extinguishers. Next, we'll recover from a 150-pound wheeled extinguisher. We are now going to recover Halon from a 150-pound wheeled extinguisher. It's important to remember that both handheld and wheeled extinguishers are pressurized, and this pressure is what will initially be moving the Halon from the extinguisher to the Defender. This process is the same as for handheld units, except that we'll be recovering the Halon through the unit's hose. If a 150-pound wheeled unit has not been discharged, then you can disconnect it and recover directly from the unit's tank. Connect the Defender's tank valve TV1 to the pump deck's P2 port for vapor. Next, hook up a hose to the tank's liquid TV2 and the pump deck's P3 port. Now, hook up the two ends of the dual line hose to ports P4 and P5. Remove the extinguisher hose nozzle and assemble the adapter that will accept the dual line's merged end. Attach the dual line. Now we're ready to set the valve positions. Turn TV1 vapor port valve to off and the TV2 liquid port to on. Set valves V2 and V3 to liquid. There are two hand valves on the extinguisher and its hose. Pull both of these forward to open them and then open the small valve on the dual line. The Defender's tank pressure will normally read 50 to 100 psi. Turn the V1 valve to tank because that's where you want the halon from the extinguisher to go. Turn the V5 pump valve to on. Halon is now being recovered from the extinguisher. Just like the handheld extinguisher recovery, the compound gauge will start dropping as the halon is removed. When you're down to 20 psi, rock the extinguisher a few times. This will turn any liquid in the bottom to vapor. When the compound gauge reads 10 to 15 psi, you can speed up the recovery process by bypassing the filter. To do this, turn the pump deck valves V3 and V4 to vapor and turn V2 to off. Check the moisture inlet indicator at the top right of the control panel. When all of the halon liquid is recovered, there won't be any liquid passing through. The compound gauge next to it will continue to drop. When it reads 5 psi, most of the halon will be out of the unit's tank, but not the hose. To recover the hose halon, walk the extinguisher's hose a couple of times. The compound gauge will continue to drop. When it reaches 10 to 20 inches mercury vacuum, all of the halon is recovered from the 150-pound unit. Close the Defender's tank by turning the V1 valve to off and turn off the pump by turning V5 to off. This completes recovery from 150-pound wheeled extinguishers. For our last recovery demonstration, we'll recover halon from a P-19 crash truck tank. For our demonstration, we're showing a simulated scene with a 500-pound tank. The recovery process is similar to other extinguisher recovery, except that the P-19 tank is not pressurized beyond halon's natural pressure of 36.7 psia, pounds per square inch atmosphere, at 70 degrees Fahrenheit. The P-19 truck nitrogen system propels halon to the fire. We're going to recover the halon from the P-19 tank, clean and dry it, and transfer it to a 1,500-pound bulk storage tank. Always start by making sure you have enough air pressure and all of the valves are in the off position. Hook up the pump deck port P2 to the storage tank vapor port. Do the same for the pump deck P3 liquid to storage tank liquid. Next, hook up a line from port P4 to truck tank vapor and P5 to truck tank liquid. The Defender's ports, TV1 and TV2, will not be used. The liquid and vapor ports on the P-19 crash truck and the bulk storage tank will be open. Turn control panel valves V2 and V3 to liquid. Now we're ready to start the recovery process. Turn the V1 valve to tank and the V5 pump valve to on. Halon is now being pumped through the filter from the P-19 tank and put into the 1,500-pound storage tank. The sight glass with moisture indicator will show when all of the liquid halon is recovered. The liquid will stop flowing through them. At this point, you can bypass the filter and pump the remaining vapor in the P-19 tank directly to the bulk storage tank by turning valves V3 and V4 to vapor and V2 to off. The dot in the moisture indicators should have turned green by now, indicating that all moisture was removed from the halon. The pressure reading on the compound gauge will drop like it did for the handheld and 150-pound extinguishers. When it reaches 10 to 20 inches mercury vacuum, the liquid and vapor has been recovered. Turn the V1 and V5 control panel valves to off. Close the P-19 tank valves for liquid and vapor and disconnect. This completes the demonstration for halon recovery from handheld extinguishers, 150-pound extinguishers, and P-19 crash truck mounted extinguisher systems. This section of the Defender video training will show you how to refill and recharge empty extinguishers. We'll use the same 3 basic steps of 1. Hose hookup, 2. Valve settings, and 3. The recharge process. The routine is very much like the recovery process, except when the extinguisher is filled, we'll return the halon that's in the Defender's hoses to the Defender's tank and do the normal compressed air hookup routing and set all valves to off. It's going to take less than a minute to fill this handheld extinguisher. Keep in mind that the hoses hold 2 pounds of halon, so we're going to fill the extinguisher with liquid less the 2 pounds in the hoses. For a 7-pound extinguisher, we'll stop the liquid fill at 5 pounds. Then we'll switch over to vapor to get 7 pounds of fill plus pressure. Always start by checking empty extinguishers for rust or other deterioration. If you see signs of this or any other damage, don't take a chance. Discard the unit and pick another one. Another important preliminary check is for any signs of water. Open the unit up and look inside. Blow it out with dry nitrogen if you see moisture or water. Don't use compressed air. It has water in it. Start by hooking up the TV1 tank vapor to the pump deck port P2 vapor. Next, hook up TV2 tank liquid to pump deck port P3 for liquid. The dual line hoses will hook up the Defender to the extinguisher. Hook either of the 2 dual line hoses to the pump deck's ports P4 for vapor and P5 for liquid. Turn the dual lines valve to off and hook its single end up to the extinguisher. To get halon into the extinguisher, clamp open its handle. Every extinguisher is labeled for its weight capacity. You'll know when it's full when you reach this on the scale, plus an adjustment for the extinguisher's empty weight. Weigh the unit empty with the hose hooked up and the clamp attached. You can add this empty weight to the halon weight to know when the unit's filled, or if you have an automatic scale, the scale will do this when you zero it. This is called to tare the scale. If you do this, you start with 0 reading and fill to the rated capacity. Now you're ready to set the valves. The TV1 tank vapor valve is closed. Turn the TV2 tank liquid valve to on. If you remember, we'll fill with liquid first. That's why TV2 is opened. Set control valves. V1 to extinguisher, V2 to liquid, and V3 to liquid. Start the process by opening the dual line. To fill the unit, start the pump by turning the V5 pump valve to on. Here's a hint. Since smaller units fill real fast, you can slow the pump down to give you more time to watch the scale. It does this when you set the V5 pump knob somewhere between off and the full on position. Fill the unit up to 2 pounds less than its capacity. Stop the pump by turning the V5 pump valve to off. Now we'll switch over to vapor to get the 2 pounds of halon from the hoses into the extinguisher and pressurize the unit. V1 to extinguisher. Turn V2 to off, V3 to vapor, turn TV1 to on, and TV2 to off. Turn the V5 pump valve to on to start the pump. The Defender is now pumping a combination of halon and vapor and the nitrogen from the dome of the receiver tank and is pushing the liquid in the hoses to the extinguisher. This is how you pressurize the unit so that it can propel the halon to the fire. The extinguisher's gauge will continue to rise. The gauge has a pie-shaped green section. Fill the unit until the gauge needle reaches the high side of the green and reads the rated pressure shown on the label for that unit. Larger extinguishers usually need a higher pressure as shown on their gauges. To test the unit's pressure, take off the handle clamp and rotate or shake it a few times. If the gauge reads in the same pressure range, the extinguisher is properly filled. After all filling is completed, the halon vapor in the hoses should be returned to the Defender's tank by turning TV1 to off and TV2 to on. Set the control panel valves V1 to tank, V2 to off, V3 to vapor, and V4 to vapor. Purge the hoses by turning the V5 pump valve to on. When the compound gauge on the control panel drops down to 10 to 20 inches mercury vacuum, the hoses are empty. Turn V1 and V5 pump valves to off. Turn the dual line valve to off and disconnect. This completes the recharge mode for handheld extinguishers. This is the longest procedure in the training operations. It's not difficult to do, but it has to be done in the right order. After you've practiced it a couple of times, it will become automatic. The recharge procedure for a 150-pound wheeled extinguisher is almost the same as for handheld extinguishers. The two things different are that you'll remove the unit's hose so you can recharge direct to the tank, and you'll recharge to a higher pressure. Start with the routine to connect and check out compressed air and turn all valves to the off position. Remove the unit's hose and attach the proper adapter to fit the dual line or half-inch line. In this illustration, we have chosen the quarter-inch dual line, but out in the field, the half-inch line will accommodate more distance between the Defender 2000 and the wheeled unit. Now we'll hook up the hoses. These are the same as for the handheld units. Turn off the dual line valve and hook up the two ends to P4 and P5. The single end of the dual line goes to the extinguisher. If you have a floor scale, use it to weigh the empty extinguisher like we did for the handheld units. Adjust it to 0. If you don't have a scale, you can fill it by watching the level gauge on the extinguisher. Fill it till it reads full. The valves will also be set to the same position used to fill handheld units. These valve positions are clearly shown at a glance in your operator's manual. Start filling and recharging the unit by turning the pump valve V5 to on. This unit has a pressure rating of 200 psi. We'll get this pressure increase by switching over to vapor fill when the unit is almost full with liquid. Turn the V5 pump valve to off. Set the Defender tank and pump deck valves for the vapor charge. Turn V2 to off, V3 to vapor, and turn the V5 pump valve to on. The pressure in the extinguisher tank will slowly rise to 200 psi, and the level gauge should read full. If for some reason you can't get enough pressure in the extinguisher, you can give it a boost by hooking up a tank of dry nitrogen to the Defender's tank valve TV3. If you boost the Defender tank pressure, you'll be able to boost the extinguisher by an equal amount. After you've completed the filling and charging, you'll want to recover the halon that is in the hoses by pulling it back to the Defender's storage tank. Once again, this is the same procedure that we used for handheld units, and your operator's manual shows this step by step. For our final filling demonstration, we'll show you how to fill the tank on a P19 firefighting truck. Since the system is inside the truck body, we are using a simulated setup so you can get a better picture of what's happening. The P19 truck extinguisher system has one big difference over handheld and wheeled extinguishers. It is not pressurized. The halon is pumped out to the fire by nitrogen on the truck. Remove the P19's extinguisher hose, add the right adapter, connect the P5 extinguisher liquid port on the pump deck to the liquid port on the P19 tank. Most of the time, you'll be filling the P19 tank from a 1,500-pound bulk storage tank. Hook up the bulk tank by connecting the P2 port on the pump deck to the vapor port on the bulk tank, or you may hook the vapor port on the bulk tank directly to the vapor port on P19 to equalize pressure. Next, hook up the P4 port to the P19 tank's vapor port. Open the P19 tank and the bulk storage port valves for both vapor and liquid. Set the control panel valves V2 and V3 to liquid and V4 to vapor. V4 relieves the back pressure when you're filling the P19 tank. When you're ready to start filling, turn the V1 valve to extinguisher and the V5 pump valve to on. The only way you will know when the P19 tank is full is when the indicator gauge reads full. The only pressure reading will be from the halon's natural pressure, which is 36.7 pounds per square inch atmosphere at 70 degrees Fahrenheit. When the P19 tank is full, turn the V1 and V5 valves to off. To recover the halon in the hoses, repeat the purge cycle like we did for handheld and 150-pound units. Start by closing the P19 crash truck valves for both liquid and vapor. Set control panel valves